Monica is a disappointing child who couldn't even go to college. She is completely different from Linda. It is my mother at home who harshly criticizes me, the older daughter in our family. My father nods in agreement, and my younger sister Linda, understanding that she is being praised, shows a confident and filled smile. My sister attends a prestigious university, and I work with just a high school diploma. My parents proudly praise my sister for her efforts. Why are we so different? I am Monica, 26 years old. I work as a web designer. I was born and raised in a somewhat rural town, living with my grandparents, parents, and sister. My sister Linda is 7 years younger than me, and she was very much adored by the family. Her opinions and whims were often prioritized, which led to me being increasingly neglected. Our parents were never equal in their treatment of us. On Linda's birthday, she would receive expensive gifts, but since my birthday is close to Christmas, it was always celebrated together, and I only received one gift. Furthermore, the gifts were mostly study materials and books, which I had no interest in at the time. When Linda started playing soccer, my parents never missed a week of supporting her at practices and games. I was a member of the tennis club in middle school, but even on my last match before graduating middle school, my parents couldn't come to support me because they had to drive Linda somewhere. Living like this, I always felt a difference between me and my sister. There were days I wanted to cry, but my sister always encouraged me. Whenever our parents compared me and my sister, Linda would say, "It's not like that. Monica is good at studying and teaching, and she can do anything." And after my last match, she said, "Good job," and gave me a small bouquet of flowers she had picked in the park. It seemed that our grandparents also grieved over our parents' attitudes. They would tell my parents to change their behavior towards me and defend me. But my grandmother passed away before I graduated from high school, and soon after my grandfather also passed on. My sister continued to take my side, but it seems that my mother didn't like that. Gradually, my mother began to speak harshly to Linda as well, just like she did to me. "If you're going to always side with your sister, you might as well stand outside too." Around the time when the snow began to pile up in the dead of winter, my mother started to threaten us like this. I wanted to avoid involving my sister in such situations, so I had no choice but to tell her, "You don't have to take my side anymore." Eventually, Linda stopped defending me and, supported by our parents, she dedicated herself to sports and studies, seemingly enjoying every day. Meanwhile, influenced by the consecutive funerals of our grandparents, our parents told us, "We don't have any savings." And I had no choice but to give up on going to college. I really wanted to study design at university, but that wasn't allowed, and after graduating high school, the only option was to start working right away. However, my desire to be involved in design was strong, and I took an office job at a design company a bit far from my hometown. The company was small and created websites for women's services like hair salons and nail salons. Wanting to study design, I repeatedly asked to do more and was also allowed to serve as an assistant to the designers. Working in the office while learning from professional designers up close was tough at times, but it actually motivated me more each day. My goal to become a web designer grew stronger every day, and studying became the most important time for me. I hardly went back home anymore. Since going home meant just being looked down upon by my parents, I felt it was a hassle. I spent any spare time I found immersed in studying design. On holidays, I used online courses to steadily acquire software skills. This effort finally paid off, and I was welcomed as a member of the design team. My enthusiasm became known to the other designers in the company, and they started introducing me to useful materials and contacts. 3 years later, I was trusted with projects as a full-fledged web designer. 8 years after graduating from high school and working successfully as a web designer, I received news that my sister was going to take the university entrance exams. Surprisingly, she was aiming for the prestigious medical school in a big city. Linda had always maintained top grades due to her hard work, and her acceptance seemed almost certain. Recalling our childhood and how she had supported me, I felt a strong desire to help her in return and offered my support. A few months later, she was accepted into her first-choice medical school. I was genuinely happy for her and congratulated her warmly. "Linda, congratulations on your acceptance. You really worked hard on your exam preparations. I truly admire you." Linda, slightly embarrassed, thanked me, but then she brought up a concern. "I have a little issue. Since it's a private medical school, there seems to be a suggested donation. It's not mandatory, but Dad and Mom are worried about being looked down on as poor if they don't contribute. But just the living expenses and tuition are already costly, so I'm not sure what to do." Linda mentioned she planned to cover her living expenses with part-time jobs, but studying in medical school demands immense dedication. I could easily imagine her struggling to keep up with the vast amount of study required. Although I wanted to help with the donation, it was impossible for my father, a white-collar worker, and my mother, who only worked 2 days a week, to afford such expenses. The tuition for a private medical university itself was a substantial burden on the family finances. It seemed they intended for me to cover the costs. I was surprised that they had asked Linda to request money instead of asking directly themselves. Despite my disdain for my parents' actions, I decided to support my sister and agreed to provide for the donation and other entrance fees. Thus, Linda began living alone in an apartment near the university and started her new life. Her place wasn't too far from mine, so I thought she could rely on me any time. However, perhaps because she was immersed in her college life, her responses to me were rather curt. Still, I would receive messages like, "I want to eat this," or "I need this. Please buy it for me." And I would arrange these things for her, supporting her in ways she couldn't ask from our parents. We sometimes ate together, but even then, she was brusque, focusing on her smartphone rather than engaging in conversation with me. "No matter what I say," she insists. Studying is hard. I started to feel bewildered by such responses. Somehow, Linda had become cold towards me. Even today's meal felt as if I had forced her to come out. Trying to change the mood, I brought up our parents in a cheerful tone. "Mom and Dad probably only care about you though, Linda." Suddenly, Linda stared at me intently and snorted lightly. "Of course. A medical student like me and a high school graduate designer like you are incomparable. No one cares about a job that doesn't even require qualifications like yours." Her intense tone made my blood run cold. There's no need to say it like that. Just because it's a job that doesn't require qualifications. That's the truth. Being a designer is just a title, and anyone can make a site if they look it up online. It might be better if you had a qualification, but it might be tough for a high school grad like you to get one. It's not that simple. I'm studying and working every day. It's not like you to say such things without knowing. Linda glanced at me displeased and clicked her tongue. "Dad and Mom often say that I'm going to a prestigious university and have a promising future, but you didn't even go to college and are a disappointment. I'm only going out to eat with you because our parents told me to. They say, though she's disappointing, make sure Monica doesn't fall any lower. You, the future doctor, should look out for her. Our parents have always compared Linda and me since we were children. Linda is smart, kind, and dependable, while Monica is stupid, clumsy, and can't do anything." Those words that were directly hurled at me resurfaced, and I felt like I was suffocating. My head spun, and I could only bow down and endure it. Seeing me like that, Linda mistook my demeanor for crying, gave a slight smile, said, "I'm going home now," and left. Having moved out and gained the new freedom of living alone, Linda seemed like a completely different person. Surrounded by exceptional people she never met back home, she must fully believe the praises our parents heap on her every day. If our parents say every day that Linda is undeniably a prodigy and she will definitely become a top-class doctor, it's no wonder Linda believes it without a doubt. Those words included a disdainful attitude towards me, which likely led Linda to naturally adopt the same view towards me. This year-end, as usual, I returned home for the holidays. I was asked to return home with Linda, who always had a cold attitude, so we went back together. Linda had been extremely busy with her studies and practical training, and it seemed she hadn't returned home once since starting university. Perhaps because of that, my parents didn't pay any attention to me and were completely focused on Linda. When we arrived home, the table was filled with treats like steak and pizza to welcome her, and in the evening neighbors, relatives, and even Linda's local classmates gathered for a big party. Linda seemed pleased with the atmosphere and began boasting loudly. "Mom tells me to come home more often, but my university is that prestigious one. And it's the most difficult medical school, so it's obvious that studying is tough. I'm still a student, but we have many team projects, and I can't just leave them to relax at home. Everyone keeps contacting me whenever something happens, and it really troubles me." I pretended to be cooking in the kitchen and quietly slipped away, but I could hear Linda's loud boasting clearly. To the parents and relatives, it might have been fine, but to the neighbors and her classmates, Linda's boasting probably sounded unpleasant. Perhaps tired of Linda's solo performance, when I brought over some wine, a neighborly old man tried to change the conversation to me. "Aren't you working in design, Monica?" However, Linda and my parents criticized me in unison. "You can't really talk much about her. She's trying, but..." Exactly. She couldn't even go to college and is such a disappointment. She's completely different from her sister. Among the ones gathered, there were many who hadn't gone to college and were working instead. There were people with families and parents with children, but as they were enjoying the feast, everyone refrained from contradicting my mother's words. Only my parents and Linda seemed completely unaware of the situation. I felt awkward and tried to leave without saying anything. However, Linda stopped me. "You still show your face at home a lot, don't you, Monica? I'm doing well in my university studies, so I'm not embarrassed. Maybe you can be so bold, because you don't think about anything." After saying that, Linda burst out laughing loudly. Our parents also laughed back. "If you say that much, it's surely going to hurt her. That's pitiful." Hearing those words, I immediately felt anger rising. "It seems like it's better if I don't come back next year." I got it. I managed to squeeze out those words. Relatives and neighbors looked on with concern, but I put down the tray I was holding and went to get my coat and bag. Linda and the others watched me prepare to leave. I understand everyone's feelings very well. I won't come back to this house anymore. My heart was filled with anger. I felt absolutely nothing towards my sister, just as I did towards my parents. As I said this and left, the three of them waved happily. "Don't come back again." While heading to the station, I desperately suppressed the anger inside me. Returning home always made my heart heavy. When I was aspiring to be a web designer, I could distance myself from my parents by using my studies as a reason. However, as I grew older in my career, I felt it was difficult to easily sever the bond with my parents, and I found myself increasingly troubled. Linda is still a university student and young. It might be difficult for her to understand how hard it is to work in society. Still, I think our parents were trying in their own way to raise their children. Even now, Linda is praised as a genius for her academic abilities, and everyone adopts an attitude of looking down on me. Amidst the childish exchanges, I felt anger and was filled with disappointment. If one takes pride in their work, such a relationship should not continue, even with one's parents. I was appalled by Linda's terrible behavior. But this became the moment I decided to cut ties with my family. Months after making this decision, I unexpectedly received a call from Linda. Afterwards, she persistently sent messages asking me to answer the phone. I wasn't blocking her, so I reluctantly answered. "Did you properly pay my tuition?" Linda's voice, speaking slowly to me, had a hint of urgency. I responded calmly. "I paid the donation and the entrance fee before you enrolled. What about this year's tuition? The university has urgently requested that it be paid. I don't know anything about the tuition. Even over the phone, I could sense that Linda was at a loss for words. Indeed, I had drained my savings to provide her with a significant amount of money. I had paid for the entrance fee, donation, and tuition equivalent to 1 year. My savings were almost depleted, and I had planned to pay any further amounts as they came due, so the tuition for the following years remained unpaid. And then there was the incident at the end of the year. It was unbelievable that, after telling me not to come home, they would ask me to pay for tuition. I was asked for a donation, right? I paid the other amounts because I wanted to support you. Didn't Mom and Dad send you to an out-of-state private university because they could afford the tuition? Or did they send you despite not having the money? That's not it. I have many wealthy friends, so there are other expenses besides living costs. Mom and Dad somehow managed those costs. That's why they don't have money for the tuition, so they told me to contact you. In fact, there was a reason I could afford to support Linda's tuition. It was because I had advanced in my career as a designer by switching to a major design company. My achievements as a designer were recognized, and my salary significantly increased. Furthermore, as I continued to be busy with work, I spent little of my salary and bonuses, allowing my savings to grow. I had discussed my job change with my parents, so they probably counted on my financial support from the beginning to advance Linda's education. Once they realized I could support not just the donation but also the tuition, it seems the savings intended for her tuition were spent on her leisure activities. Perhaps I was negligent, but I no longer had the heart to forgive them enough to just provide financial support. Assisting with the tuition wasn't a difficult task, but I refused Linda's request. A few days later, I was contacted by my parents, who demanded payment for the tuition, but I refused again. The urgency and accusatory tone in their voices over the phone further sank my spirits. I felt as though I no longer had a place to return to. They were only interested in my money, not in me as part of the family. Being taken for granted without any consultation was something I could not accept. Linda called almost every day. If there had been a sincere apology, maybe I could have been persuaded to forgive her a bit. However, what I actually heard was, "Please pay the tuition. If you don't, I'll be expelled. Scholarships and part-time jobs aren't enough. It would be a waste if a promising student like me were expelled, right? I'll definitely pay you back once I start working. Please help me as a family." The voicemail was filled with such self-centered words. There were also absurd messages like, "If you're troubled because they told you not to come home, I can try to persuade our parents instead." I saved those messages in a different file and deleted everything from my smartphone. After that, I sent Linda a message and blocked her phone number. No one would want to be treated by someone who only talks down to others just because they are family. This is how I completely cut off communication with my family and was able to welcome a new spring. I heard from one of the relatives that Linda somehow managed to pay for her second year's tuition with scholarships and loans from relatives. However, unable to receive living expense support anymore, Linda started working part-time. But with the immense amount of studying and exams and practical training, working part-time was harder than she thought, and she ended up dropping units and had to leave university 6 months later. I had been supporting both her tuition and sending money home, but I stopped the remittances last year when I cut ties. With my financial support gone and living on the edge, my parents now had Linda, who had dropped out of college, back home. Although Linda was academically capable, there was no money at home to consider transferring to another university. Yet she did not work locally but instead became reclusive, immersing herself in video games daily and lashing out in stress. At night, I heard from a friend who lives nearby that the sounds of family arguments are always audible. My parents seem unable to say anything to the daughter they once doted on. When I met my parents by chance outside, they looked utterly exhausted, and it seems that neighbors, perhaps out of awkwardness, hardly speak to them. One day, perhaps due to stress, my father caused an incident. While on his way to work on the train, he groped a woman next to him and was caught by other passengers and taken away by the police. Fortunately, a settlement was reached and he was not charged, but this incident forced him to resign as it was already being talked about at his workplace, and he felt uncomfortable staying. My mother had to start working, but having only part-time job experience before, it was difficult for her to find a job that could provide a significant income. My parents tried to reach out to me through relatives at times. However, their messages were always self-centered and commanding. Eventually, the relatives, tired of my parents' attitudes, told me, "We'll handle things smoothly here, don't worry," and stopped relaying their messages to me. I have finally severed all ties with my family home and am now able to live a settled life. I heard that, in addition to my reclusive sister Linda, my unemployed father has developed a poor reputation, and rumors have spread in the neighborhood, leading to them being shunned even more than before. My mother, frustrated with the situation, seems to have gone somewhere. Now, I'm told that no one can get in touch with her. Left behind, my father and Linda do not work and are living a life almost akin to homelessness. Had they valued their neighbors even slightly, they might have received some warm comfort, but given their past actions, help from those around them is virtually non-existent. I am successfully building my career in the field of design. I have been selected to participate in a major project and am scheduled to be involved in work that will leave my name known. This has motivated me to finally pursue a long-held goal, taking the university entrance exams. With sufficient savings and the current project wrapping up, I plan to start studying for the exams seriously. I also have plans to study business management, as I consider going independent in the future. With this new challenge ahead, my heart is racing with anticipation.